Good evening and welcome to an ATV Special Broadcast. I'm Nicole Pulley. General Colin Powell is among the most influential and notable figures in United States history. Born in Harlem, New York to Jamaican immigrants, Powell was educated in public schools and graduated from Morris High School in 1954. While studying at the City College of New York, Powell joined the Reserve Officers Training Corps and became commander of his unit. After graduation, Powell served in the South Vietnam for the U.S. Army as a second lieutenant. Powell has received 11 military decorations, including the Legion of Merit, a Purple Heart, and a Bronze Star. Powell earned an MBA at George Washington University and won a White House Fellowship in 1972. He served as senior military aide to Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger, helping to coordinate the invasion of Grenada and the bombing of Libya. In 1987, Powell became the National Security Advisor during the Reagan administration. In 1991, Colin Powell was appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest military position in the Department of Defense. He developed what became known as the Powell Doctrine, an approach to military conflicts that aims to maximize success and minimize casualties. Colin Powell retired from the Army in 1993, and in 2000, President George W. Bush appointed him Secretary of State. Since then, Powell has spent much of his life inspiring young people. Along with his wife, Powell began America's Promise Alliance to ensure the youth receive resources necessary to succeed. He joins us this evening to discuss the wars in the Middle East, President Obama's performance thus far, and his work with young people. General Powell, let me begin by saying what a pleasure it is to have you here with us tonight.
Great pleasure to be on campus of American University and to participate in the Kennedy Political Union lecture series.
The BBC reported this week that the Libyan government is open to any form of political reform so long as Colonel Gaddafi remains in power. His regime spoke to the Greek Prime Minister this week asking for possible solutions to the war. What do you see as being a viable solution to the war in Libya?
Well, I think under any set of circumstances, Colonel Gaddafi has to leave. And I think he ultimately will. I'm not sure how it will come about, but the international pressure against him and against his regime is pretty unrelenting. It's not clear that this military action will be the way that it is accomplished. There seems to be a stalemate. There were those who thought that his military would crack immediately and the rebels would win with NATO air support. But that hasn't happened, and so this stalemate will probably continue for a while longer, but eventually I hope that Colonel Gaddafi and his family realize that their day has come and gone. This Arab Spring has now reached Libya just as it's reaching other parts of the Middle East.
Do the Libyan rebels have what it takes to defeat his regime, or are they going to need to rely on other forces?
Well, right now they apparently do not have what it takes to win against his regime militarily. At least they haven't demonstrated that yet. And when I watch them on television, it's a fairly disorganized group of individuals running around in pickup trucks, shooting rocket launchers, heaven knows where those rockets are going. And that kind of force, unless reinforced or trained or equipped, cannot stand up against an organized force. I think what people are surprised about is that Colonel Gaddafi has some support in the country. It is not all one-sided. Everybody wants the rebels to prevail. He's held his army together for the last several weeks. They're responding to his orders and they're defending the regime. And we have to remember that a significant part of the population, principally in the West, are not supportive of what the rebels are doing. But I think eventually a solution will be found and he will go.
Let's switch gears quickly and talk about President Obama. During your interview with Meet the Press in 2008, you voiced your support for the then candidate Barack Obama. How would you rate his performance as president thus far?
I think he came in and took some very, very positive action to stabilize the economy. I think the economy is coming back. It's reflected in many ways. Finally, the unemployment rate has started to go down, and that's the thing everybody needs to watch. The stock market is doing well. The corporate America is doing well, but they're not investing enough into the economy to create the kinds of jobs that our people need. And so I think that was his #1 priority, and it takes time to turn around a recession from a recession of the kind we have. and it's slowly starting to happen. So I think he did what he said he was going to do. But it's going to take some more time, and regrettably, some of our citizens will continue to suffer during that period. I think that he has restored our place in the world to some extent. He has reached out to people, and you can see that as you go around the world. At the same time, he has almost the same set of problems that President Bush had, and even more. Afghanistan is still unresolved. Iraq is slowly resolving itself. The Middle East peace process is not moving forward. And on top of that, now we have what's been happening across the Maghreb and the Middle East, and particularly Libya. And so, as with every president I've ever worked with or known, you inherit a set of problems and you get a new set of problems added on it. And so he's trying to work his way through all of that. I think he still has the support of the American people. His numbers go up and down, but that's the nature of politics. He looked at it carefully. He's always being accused by some of taking too long to act. But he uses the time available to him to make a careful analysis of the situation. He did it when he looking at the surge in Afghanistan, and he did it with the Libya situation. He consulted with allies. He helped create a coalition among our NATO partners, our Gulf Cooperation Council folks, and the Arab League. And then they took it to the UN and got a United Nations resolution, which restricts what you can do. And then on day one, he threw in the armed forces of the United States, its air power, to help with this. So I don't think he waited too long.
Hillary Clinton is the Secretary of State and has voiced that it would be difficult for her to serve another 4 years if President Obama is reelected. There has been talk of Robert Gates potentially becoming the next Secretary of State. Do you see any potential candidates for this position?
I haven't heard any talk about Bob Gates becoming Secretary of State. Bob is seriously planning to step down sometime this year. He's made it clear. He's been on a farewell tour giving goodbye speeches to various audiences. So I think he will step down, and not for the purpose of taking another government position. Who will replace him as Secretary of Defense? I don't know. He's done a tremendous job, and it'll be a tough position to fill. But there are lots of candidates out there, and I'm sure the president is spending a great deal of time thinking about it. Secretary Clinton has said she wants to serve one term. That was my position as well when I was Secretary of State. It's a very demanding job, and what she will do in the future, whether she is interested in politics or not, I don't know. When she said she was only going to serve one term, she kind of implied that she was moving on to other things in life after that one term. But one can change one's mind. That's the beauty of our system.
True. Now, over the past decade, the news industry has experienced many transformations, the most notable being social media and the introduction of Twitter and Facebook. What are your thoughts on these social mediums? Are they helping or are they harmful to? They're both.
But the one thing I know is they're here, and they're not going away, and they're going to reshape our culture and geography and history and the whole world in the most exciting and sometimes scary sorts of ways. With so much information available to us all, there is a tendency to focus only on that slice of the information system that reinforces your own views. So when I was a kid and you listened to CBS News or ABC or NBC at 6:30 in the evening, it was only 15 to 30 minutes, and that was it. There wasn't any other news. And so you essentially got a full range of opinions and different points of view on the news, and so you had to take it all in and determine what you thought about it all. But now you can stay in your slice and never come out. And I think that is troublesome because people are becoming so narrow in their thinking and so reluctant to listen to the views of outsiders that I think this could hurt us. And we've got to find a way to push back against that. And learning about an issue, learning about the policies that we're pursuing or the problems of the day isn't just a matter of picking it up on a tweet or watching your Facebook page. It takes study, it takes serious reading, it takes serious analysis. I find too many young people just grab something that they saw on the internet and believe it, and never stop to say, well, does this make sense? I see a lot of old people do that. Does this make sense? I've been pushing back on this whole birther movement. Doesn't make any sense. Yet people will not turn it loose because it reinforces the views they have about the president and about his policies. And so we've got to find a way to break through those kinds of barriers. Perhaps we should turn off our television sets more than we do now.
So while it can be empowering to citizen journalists, at the same time, there's this sense of, is something credible?
Yeah, that's right. It is powerful, and it is, on balance, I think, for good. Look what it's done in the Middle East by getting people to be able to see what's going on in the rest of the world and communicate with each other. Well, that's good. I think it helped. And the Cold War, even though we didn't have Twitter and Facebook then, President Gorbachev allowed ideas to cross the Iron Curtain, which were destructive of his system. So information is good, but it has to be used properly. And it has to be used with sophistication and with a critical mind. Just don't believe everything you read or everything you see or everything that comes in across the internet. It may not be true. Challenge it. Use your own common sense. That's why we're sending you to wonderful places like American University, so that you will challenge what people are telling you and make an informed judgment. I was a proponent of Don't Ask, Don't Tell some 18 years ago. And the reason for it was that we were not sure that the enormously close confines of military service, where we tell you who you're going to live with, we tell you who you're going to sleep with, who you're going to bunk with, and a lot of the other issues, such as domicile issues, such as what is a spouse, all of these issues had not yet been resolved in civilian society. And therefore, we thought that the way to compromise at the time was don't ask, don't tell. Gays and lesbians were free to come into the military. We just asked that you keep your sexual preference private. Now, if we didn't have that compromise, if we hadn't come up with a compromise that President Clinton accepted and fully supported, then we would have had a law passed by the Congress that would have gone back to the old way that asked people as they were trying to enlist, are you gay or lesbian? And if the answer was yes, you were not allowed in. So it was a compromise. Was it discriminatory? Yeah. Not as discriminatory as the policy might have been, the law would have been, but it was discriminatory, because the ultimate purpose of the armed forces is to be a reflection of society and also to fight wars and send people to battle. And we have always been at the mercy of the Congress with respect to what we can do. And the Congress has always yielded, for the most part, to the judgment of the military as to what is something that we can handle. And in this case, several years ago, as society changed, I changed my position and said, if the military leaders of today feel that this can now be managed and is consistent with what's happening in civilian life, then I'm all for getting rid of the policy. And the policy has been eliminated, even though members of Congress, some members of Congress, don't want it eliminated. So it's not as clear-cut as it might appear. But the military, in traditional fashion, are studying it very carefully and are going to implement it. They're going to follow the law. And it'll take them a little time to do it. But it is not just a simple matter of letting gays in. You have to consider survivor benefits, housing, all sorts of issues that they're working on now. But it'll be executed and executed well. America is becoming a more sophisticated economy. We need more educated people for the economy of the future. And the other thing that is so significant is that in one more generation, the majority of Americans will be minorities. Census information that came out recently said we have 50 million Hispanics. When you add in African Americans and others, you're starting to creep up to 100 million Americans. And sooner or later, we'll be the majority. Higher birth rates among the minorities. And for that reason, we got to educate them, because they're going to be the leaders. They're going to be the ones taking charge of this country. And so my wife now chairs America's Promise, and I help her in every way that I can. And we have made it a priority of ours to convert America into a grad nation, a nation of graduates. And with communities around the country, with companies around the country, we're holding dropout summits, dropout prevention summits, stay in school. One point I want to make, though, based on what you said, it is fixing the education system is not just fixing the schools. The schools is where they eventually go to drop out if they're going to drop out. And we should have great teachers. We should invest in our schools. We should have terrific buildings and learning labs and all the rest of that. But education begins at home. It begins when a young child hears its mother for the first time and knows that's the mother. That's when education begins. When he starts to learn, she starts to learn the language. And it is that formulative period, even before they get anywhere near school, where education begins.